Bug reports are always like this in Dwarf Fortress. It's like, I have a problem in my tavern. There's a bunch of dead cats in there and I don't know why. And so they send me a save or whatever. What we ended up discovering was that the cats, so I had just added this new feature in the taverns where there's actual service at the bar, right? So there's the tavern keeper will get a mug, fill it at the barrel, bring it over to the table, hand it to a dwarf, and the dwarf will drink. But oftentimes the dwarves are like called out to go do a job, right? And so they'll take their mug, just pitch it on the floor because they don't care about like cleanliness because I'd have to teach them how to be clean, right? So they pitch it on the floor, and of course that spills the contents onto the floor, right? So now you got like alcohol over the floor of the bar, and that's fine, right? That's how bars are sometimes. But the cats would walk in there, and because of this other thing we added to make like lava more realistic or whatever, the alcohol would actually get on their little feet, right? So the cats have this alcohol now soaked in on their little feet. And because of this other, so there was this whole other thing that I added back when stuff was getting like, when you'd get like blood splattered on you during a fight or something. We had this problem where it would be like, there's blood on your eyes or whatever, and there's blood. And so when people would go to like clean with soap, it was really weird because they'd be like soaping their eyeballs or whatever. And we're like, okay, so we just need to make eyelids work, right? So we go to the eyelid body part, and we're like, the eyelid just cleans like the eye, right? And at this time, of course, because of how the thing works modularly, like, well, we can make cats clean themselves because it's so cute, right? Like, oh, they're just licking their paws and so forth, and it's charming, right? And so we have these cats now that are in the bar with the alcohol soaked in their feet. Now they're licking them. They're like licking their paws. And of course, because we had just finished like ingested poisons not too long ago, right, they're now getting drunk, right? And this is the bug. The actual bug is just there was a numeric problem because I didn't expect this at all. And so they were like drinking a whole mug every time they would link their hand, like an actual mug for a poor cat. And the other calculations were all fine, so that just wasn't good for them. Their blood alcohol content shoots up to who knows what. Right. And they didn't make it, and we had like the 7 or 8, we just go on Wikipedia, right, and have like the 7 or 8 different symptoms of alcohol poisoning, and they eventually get to respiratory failure, and the cat's respiratorily failed and keeled over in the bar, and that was the bug report. And
but like like the punchline of the story is all these cats were getting drunk, but like on the way there, you made a system for cats to have fucking eyelids.
Yeah, yeah. Well, everybody's got eyelids. Yeah. I mean, everybody who has them. We actually had to go through the creature list and be like, who has eyelids, who doesn't. We're not that careful with that because we have like 500 creatures.
Dwarf Fortress is one of the most interesting games ever made, but the reason we've been sitting on this interview for so long is that our usual trick of using gameplay B-roll to explain what the developer is talking about doesn't really work here. You see, Dwarf Fortress looks like this. To the average viewer, the action that's taking place here is incomprehensible. In fact, it's only after playing hours of the game and watching dozens of YouTube tutorials that I can decipher half of what's going on here.
I don't even see the code. All I see is blonde, brunette, redhead.
But the ASCII graphics are part of the reason Dwarf Fortress is so interesting. You see, a lot of modern games are burdened by their fidelity. If, say, Madden wanted to add a feature where dogs could play football, they'd have to model the dogs and texture the dogs and change a bunch of AI and animations and add lots of barks. For Dwarf Fortress, features like this are modular. Tarn and his brother Zach just add it and then choose how it interacts with the rest of the system. And that's what they've been doing for about 17 years now. And such, they've created this complex, bizarre, interconnected simulation which is capable of producing some of the wildest emergent gameplay and narrative in all of video games. I played Dwarf Fortress here and there, but I mostly watch YouTube videos. In fact, to help illustrate some of how this game works, we've gotten permission to use some footage from my favourite Dwarf Fortress storyteller, Krugsmash. We have a link in the description to his channel, which you should absolutely check out and subscribe to. But like any good story, we have to go back to the start. So, how did Dwarf Fortress come to be?
Yeah, so my name is Tarn Adams, and I'm the co-founder of Bay 12 Games, and I'm making a game called Dwarf Fortress with my brother Zach. The website's been up for 18 and a half years. Been working on Dwarf Fortress for 16 of those, the first few on and off, but steady for about 14. We'd always been working on a kind of fantasy role-playing simulation type game. Even when I was like very, very young, I remember in elementary school we had a game called Drag Slay. So we hadn't really seen a kind of RPG fantasy type game that really indulged in the same things that like Civilization was doing or whatever, where you could make a whole map or whatever. There was the roguelike games, which of course we were heavily into, where they make their own dungeons and so forth. But we just wanted to make the whole world. Why not make the whole world? So I created the Bay 12 website. I started giving away the game we were working on at the time for free, and at that time it was like the 5th iteration of this Drag Slay game. It was called Slaves to Armok, God of Blood. This really terrible 3D game where we had changed our philosophy at that point to like, oh, let's build from the bottom up. So we were like, okay, now we're constructing this 3D model of this person who can like walk on one hand or one foot if you set the stance variables that way. It's got these really terrible animations, like terrible, don't wow too much here. And but it had like tissues and so forth. There were spells that would like strip the skin off of people or teleport people's noses over, and the little models would move and stuff. It was like a fun little playground, not much of a game at all, and it took us years to get that far because we didn't know what we were doing. But that was the game we were working on at the time, and so we had this other kind of side of games that we were doing, because that's just, it's a slog where you're adding features very slowly. And so I'm like, okay, side project, 3 days, side project, 3 days. And this is where things like World War I Medic, which is one of our games that's gotten like a small amount of press. There's Liberal Crime Squad, which is another game. That's an ASCII game, right? Text graphics or whatever. There are several of them, and that's what Dwarf Fortress was going to be, right? Dwarf Fortress was like, a few years in, we're like, I wanted to make a game kind of like Dig Dug or something. It was actually, there's this game called VGA Minor, which is, it's got like this cross section. You go down in an elevator and you dig and you get like just your minerals and you bring them back. And this is from like the 90s or something. There's a little bit of flooding, if I recollect. You're supposed to put dynamite under the outhouse to get your wedding ring out of there or something like that, which is the plot of the game, I guess. I vaguely remember. And so we're like, okay, let's make a game called Mutant Miner. You go down and dig just like that, except you find like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles mutagen canisters and you grow extra arms so you can mine faster. And now you have progression, right? Or whatever. This is a game now. So we're like, we need to make it real time, right? It's got to be real time in order to deal with these multiple things. So now you've got multiple little people running around digging and so forth. And this is still a side project. And then we had like this, okay, we're going to make it about dwarves. You dig. Dwarves always screw up and dig too deep, they die. They leave behind their little workshops and things, and we were gonna like generate diaries and things like that. And then you'd bring an adventurer in to go and find out, as many little things as they could about the game you had just played. And so the dwarf mode makes your maximum score, and then the adventurer you send in gets the realized portion of the maximum score. Tight little, almost arcade game, right? We were really excited about this idea, so we scoped it out 2 months, and well, you see now that's gone. It just started like, because it was a fantasy game, that was probably our mistake. It started to siphon the features from the main one, right? Because it's ASCII graphics, so it's so much faster to put stuff in there. And as opposed to like this 3D thing we were working on. And so just every little idea that we had for the other game that we hadn't gotten to in 5 years, just slot it right into Dwarf Fortress. Yeah, so Dwarf Fortress is a colony management game. I mean, it's kind of hard to explain to a theoretical person. It's like, do they know what SimCity is? Do they know what Tropico is? Do they know what these other kind of games that are vaguely like it are, right? But you basically have a group of dwarves, and they mine in the mountain. You don't control any specific dwarf, but you just kind of order their general activities and just make the best of things as trouble comes your way. Make sure that you have enough alcohol to drink, and make sure that you're farming mushrooms and making little golden goblets and so forth. But when it comes to like what makes the game more unique is that it actually takes place in a persistent world that the game will cook up for you each time. So you can run a world generation, which is sort of this historical procedure that runs out, some 100 hundreds of years of history in a world map that's been cooked up just for you. And then you can play as many fortresses as you want, and the old ones will impact the new ones and so forth. You might have a dwarf from your old fortress come and migrate to your new fortress, and you'll recognize them. It'll be the same dwarf, whether or not they're missing their pinky finger is intact. You can also play a single-player RPG, so you can visit your retired fortresses, talk to your old dwarves. I mean, it's not that great, right? We don't have like a script writer like writing like this whole story of your dwarves or whatever, but they'll talk to you about what they've been doing and so forth. And over the years, it's become incredibly complicated and so forth, and that feeds into this whole notion that's at the center of the game, which is emergent narrative, right? It's the idea that you can be playing a game without a story, but a story will still arise as you follow the different threads and pieces of information that are presented to you, because your own mind is a story building engine, and we can help that by in our game design processes to encourage that kind of thing to happen. So it's really sort of a collaboration with the player to produce a bunch of stories, and you can just look up Dwarf Fortress stories as a Google search and you'll see what we mean.
Well, hello, you bearded bastards, and welcome back once again to Esteban, the Scorch Fountain. And as you can see, we have ourselves a little guest. A guest by the name of Kenam Sport Torches, the perfect growth. Or should I say, the corpse of Kenam Sport Torches, the Hydra, a giant dragon-like monster with 7 biting heads. In an interesting foe, to be sure. Showed up just moments ago and is now just kind of wandering around the fortress. It caught sight of some capybara out here and is just chasing them around the hillside. That's absolutely fine, but we can't go outside for the time being. I have reason to believe this creature will be kind of dangerous. I mean, I guess that's probably pretty obvious. On the best of days, a Hydra is a powerful foe, but this one's undead, which makes it a lot more dangerous. Oftentimes, the easiest way to kill a foe is by destroying their head, but this one has 7 of them. However, if this was a living Hydra, we could potentially do enough damage to it to exhaust it, or possibly make it collapse in pain, and then eventually bleed out. But none of those are going to be factors in combating this foe. So I'm not too sure what our plan is. If the thing would just come to the fortress, that might make things a little bit more straightforward. But no, it seems to be perfectly fine just wandering around out here. Well, that's fine. Wander away, you bastard. And in the meantime, we can address our bustling fortress. Ah, Scorch Fountain. What a fine place for a dwarf to call home.
You seem to have built this just like this. It's like an emergent like house of cards. Like just so much data in this system.
House of Cards is such a
that
scary way to say it, though.
It implies it's all going to fall apart at any moment, which may not be very flattering.
It's not untrue with, because I mean, that was a bug report we were talking about there, and there are issues all the time. But yeah, no, I mean, it is a very intricate machine, and it can have, it's interconnections everywhere. It'd be more like if the House of Cards had little strings connecting all of the cards too. And that makes it more stable in a sense because the strings hold it together, but also if you pull the wrong string too hard or something, right, you're gonna go. And we go oftentimes. Recently we allowed humans to move into your fortress and they can petition for residency based on various criteria, and you can decide to let them join or not. But then the problem is none of the clothes fit them. And so you have to explicitly say, I want to make some human clothing for human-sized people. And as you can imagine, that's fiddly, right? That's really fiddly. And just another burden that the Dwarf Fortress player has to assume, which is a problem, right? I mean, we really like to help people, but at the same time, we're adding more stuff, and then we're not helping people by doing so, and so forth. But it's more about just general modularity, I think. For instance, with villains now, we have this piece of their mind that's called their intrigue perspective, and it holds the different plots they have, the different actors in the plots, and so forth. And that's in their own mind, as opposed to being another way to do it would have been to make a global object outside of the minds of people and just have more of an objective scheme. And even if we're not doing much with it now, the fact that 2 different people can have 2 different ideas about what's going on is really important when you start thinking about partial information or deceiving people, that kind of thing. Lies are traditionally very hard to do in simulations because you have to track so much extra data. about like who knows what and who believes what. But if it's something like a plot, there's not that many plotters, right? So you can keep the memory usage down and so forth.
Do modern games bore the shit out of you or something?
Well, I mean, it's like I still listen to music, you know. I play a lot of PS4 games and stuff, and I just don't play them for like the same reason that I play them. Like if I want to go hunt metal dinosaurs or whatever, I'm gonna go hunt metal dinosaurs and not worry about whether or not like their paint is chipped properly and that kind of thing, right? I don't care. Yeah, no, people are allowed to have all kinds of varied interests and stuff, so it's cool.
Alright, now then, anyways, our fortress. Here you can see a little entryway, pretty much all set up. We have a trade depot here, as well as a couple of protective bridges that can be raised to protect the entryways. The roof up top is almost all completed, and then down in the actual fortress you can see that the meeting hall is all carved out, although we don't have any tables or chairs in place quite yet. That's because we've been working on the bedrooms, of which we have 20, and each has its own bed, cabinet, coffer, and statue. There are 2 levels of them. And then over here to the right, you can see some looms and farmer workshops, storage for plants. Underneath we have some stills and kitchens. And then way up top in this clay layer here, you can see the farm plots. And storage for seeds as well. So we're looking pretty good. We have had a couple of migrant waves at this point, so we're up to 13 dwarves. So we're going to have to start making some more bedrooms before long, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to even define what the community is, right? If someone watches Dwarf Fortress videos and stuff, contributes on like the Patreon, because I have lots of people contributing that do not play. Right. They just love the stories and stuff, and that's it's like they're part of the community, right? I mean, I joke sometimes that the people that watch videos and listen to people's stories and so forth are the players, and the people who are actually playing are more like the QA department, right? Because they have to deal with so much crap.
Can you give us some examples of like how are ways that like, you know, fortresses tend to just collapse?
So yeah, you can. I mean, a very common way that fortresses collapse is flooding. Yeah, that section of the fortress needs to be sealed off as quickly as possible, and occasionally there's a few dwarves that are just kind of stuck in there, and you build the memorials to them so that their ghosts don't haunt the fortress. And
of course.
and then they're fine. You don't need to reclaim their bodies. It helps if you can find and bury them, but sometimes it's not possible. There are sieges and like monsters coming from outside, dragons and so forth, and then from below the ground are the procedurally generated forgotten beasts. Those are not necessarily common ways fortresses fall. If you're an experienced player, you have a lot of tricks up your sleeve. If you're not, then sometimes that's it. You know, oh, I wasn't expecting the giant, hippopotamus to come and destroy my fortress. Magma down below, demons down below, starvation can kick in if you aren't watching out. And also in different versions, there's a different amount of effect of a thing called a tantrum spiral, where something goes horribly wrong for a small number of dwarves, but they're all related to each other. They're all friends. The people that know them get disturbed by that. And then if you don't give them enough, nice masterpiece dining rooms and feed them the right type of food or whatever, the grumpiness will outweigh the happiness. And then if they start throwing fits and causing trouble, that'll piss off more people. And then the whole thing just kind of spirals out of control. We're having a issue with no unhappy dwarves at all. And it turned out it's because when we added emotions to the game, we added 120 different emotions to the game, and one of them was the euphoria you feel after you've been drinking. Okay. And we had a flag that was wrong on that, so after your first drink, you would be euphoric for the rest of your life.
Oh my God.
And so they never had trouble again. So I fixed that, and then suddenly we're back down, and everyone's pissed off again. And we recently introduced the kind of short and long-term memory system to do character arcs, so that you would remember the strongest things that have happened to you over a year, and then it would save them to your long-term memories, and that also causes a personality change when it does it, so that we kind of get actual character arcs for the dwarves. But there's been some issues with that too, because they have this kind of thing where they remember the long-term memory cyclically when they're doing nothing. I mean, it'll occasionally pop into their mind, and if someone's had a crappy life, that sometimes overwhelms them. No. And they just remember these things, and they're just get more and more, and so it sets them on these arcs, right? up and down. People just aren't as resilient as regular people most of the time. I mean, these dwarves are not as resilient as they should be.
Tarn and Zach have been making this game for a die-hard community of players for almost 2 decades, but perhaps the craziest thing about all of this is that Dwarf Fortress is free. After a few years of people badgering them, they eventually put a donation button on their website and started getting support from their community. And in more recent years, they've developed a pretty healthy Patreon. But the reason for creating a commercial Steam version complete with actual sprites isn't just about making a quick buck. For Tarn and his brother, it's a lot more personal.
So yeah, so we had been giving away the game free for a very long time, and just recently, I mean, my brother's always had he's on a medication that's expensive. This is kind of a typical U.S. problem or whatever, and that's been for more than a decade or whatever. And then we just recently had like a kind of cancer scare thing that ended up costing, a bit of money and so forth. And we looked at my health insurance plan and we're like, if that had been me instead of my brother that time, then I'd have been wiped out. I mean, that's just, my plan is different from his or whatever. And just the little numbers and percentages don't add up favorably or whatever, that kind of crap. So we're just like, okay, it's time to, enter our 40s a little more responsibly. But at the same time, we wanted to keep, try and stay as close to what we were doing as we always had done. So there's always going to be a free version. Features will always be updated and in line with the Steam version. The Steam version has graphics and sound. There's no specific date for the Steam release. We're hoping to get it together in X number of months, and if X is longer than 12, then a year and months or whatever. It's game development.
You probably get asked this question all the time, but do you ever get sick of working on it, or is it just always entertaining?
No, I mean, like I said, I was working on Drag Slay when I was 10 years old, and that's 30 years ago. I mean, I don't even know what else I'd do. Because the way the game is, there's always something new to work on, right? I mean, I was reading like Chinese law codes from 1500 years ago for the law update that's coming like 4 years down the line or 5 years down the line or something. And if I want to read about that, I can do that. If I want to read books about like occult magic systems for the Magic release, I can read about that. You can always find a way to put anything you're interested in into a video game just by making it into a video game when you read about it or whatever. So it's like if I'd have to be bored of everything.